everyone. This is Nayiri from Low Carb and Fasting. Today, we're going to discuss food addictions, a topic I haven't covered much on this channel, and it is a topic of relevance to most people, most of us. Okay, so today's guest has BA in economics and political science. She has an MBA from Stanford University, but her PhD is in addictive nutrition. She's the author of Processed Food Addiction, Foundations, Assessment, and Recovery. She's also the author of several other journal articles. She's a researcher and educator working with other healthcare professionals, helping them to diagnose food addictions and provide the relevant or the appropriate treatment for their patients. And I'm delighted to have her with us today, Dr. Joan Ifland. Welcome to Low Carb and Fasting.
Thank you so much. I am so honored to be here.
Dr. Ifland, well, the honor is ours. I'm so delighted you accepted my invitation. Now, I'm really intrigued to know why someone with an economics or political science background and with an MBA then decides to do their PhD in human nutrition, but not nutrition, not any kind of nutrition, specializing in addictive behavior.
Okay, that's a great question. So the connection there is that processed food addiction is the result, I believe, and the evidence supports this, of the tobacco companies bringing their addiction business model to processed foods in the mid-1980s. And if you understand business models, then you can see exactly where this epidemic started. It was in 1980, a new product came to the market, was high fructose corn syrup. And it was very, very cheap. It's made from corn. There's hundreds of miles of cornfields in the United States. And they created this sweetener from it, from all that corn. Well, why is that so important? It's because the addiction business model depends on cheap pricing, low pricing. The addiction business model depends on being able to addict through repeat consumption the reward centers in the brain. So if your product is too expensive, people will not buy enough of it to repeatedly expose their reward centers to the substance, and you can't establish the addiction. So with the introduction of high fructose corn syrup to the market, oh my gosh, before that, sugar prices were controlled by another drug cartel known as the sugar cartel, mostly in Florida. And once the tobacco industry saw that they were out from under the pricing of their fellow drug dealers, they went for it. The other thing that happened in the early 1980s is there was a corrupt dietary guidelines process in the United States where a corrupt Harvard nutrition researcher, Hegsted, he was in the pocket of the sugar industry. He came up with the food pyramid that had refined carbohydrates at the bottom. And so there were the tobacco companies being dragged into court, beaten up in court, having to pay for their practices. And along comes the government and says, oh, we're going to advertise these addictive substances for you. There was plenty of evidence, even in the 1980s, that refined carbohydrates were addictive. So off they went. Boom, boom, boom. In 3 short years, 1985, 1988, tobacco bought Kraft, Nabisco, and General Foods. And you see already the obesity rate is going up because high fructose corn syrup turns to fat in the body 2.5 times more readily than sugar. So you will see the introduction of high fructose corn syrup, you see the dietary guidelines, and you see the obesity epidemic just starting to rise, and you see tobacco come in right at that point. And it's the rest is history. Terrible suffering and death from the addiction practices of the tobacco industry as transferred to processed foods.
I think the saddest part, I mean, but by the way, thank you for the background. But the saddest part for me is with cocaine addiction, for example, or alcohol. We do our best as adults not to expose our children to those addictive substances. We are not doing the same with sugar or processed foods, which contain high fructose corn syrup and other addictive substances. Is it because we do not realize how addictive these substances are?
Yes.
Or is it because we're surrounded by so much of the adverts of these substances that we almost normalize eating a donut and whatever eating junk food is normal? What do you think? Is it social, or is it genuine lack of understanding of the problem?
It's both, but you just described it perfectly. So you see immediately when the tobacco companies come into processed foods, who do they attack? Children. It's part of addiction science. The younger a person or any animal is, when they start to be exposed to the addictive substance, they start to ingest it, they start to consume it. The younger they are, the more difficult it will be to stop the addiction. So there'll be much more lapsing, there'll be more different attempts to try to get it under control. It will be much, much harder for it to stop. So what did the tobacco industry do as soon as they got a hold of those companies? First of all, they upped the number of Saturday morning cartoons in the US for these addictive foods. So even already in 1985, there were 150 cartoon commercials on one Saturday morning. Because in 1963, 20 years earlier, tobacco bought a company called Hawaiian Punch. It was an adult mixer for alcoholic drinks. They repositioned it as a sugary drink for children. Okay, so they already had experience with addicting children. Now, mind you, sugar is more addictive and more destructive. It will alter the brain more than cocaine. And these people just didn't care. So they did things, the marketing techniques that they took right out of tobacco and put into sugar for children was the wacky warehouse. It was their character, their mascot was Punchy. And so they had the Punchy warehouse for Hawaiian Punch. And then in 1985, when tobacco bought Kraft, they got Kool-Aid. They got a product called Kool-Aid. And they created the wacky warehouse, which is pretty ironic because wacky means, mentally ill. They are causing mental illness in children. They had the nerve to call their warehouse the wacky warehouse. It's unimaginable. So why was this giveaway program so effective for instilling addiction in a child? Well, they used the Marlboro Country Store to sell cigarettes and addict people to cigarettes. How does it work? So first you create a product. And it looks an innocent product. Oh, cigarettes are for relaxation. Oh, cigarettes are sexy. Oh, cigarettes are you're rebellious. none of which is true. They just assign it. They make the product look innocent. And they did with the sugary drinks for children. So they hid extra nicotine in cigarettes. They hid extra sugar in these sugary drinks. Even alcohol companies today, they have like a wine cooler for teenagers. And they'll say, oh, this has almost no alcohol in it. But when you analyze it, it's got plenty of alcohol in it. So they're getting these teenagers addicted to alcohol. So this is just one of their tactics. They hide addictive substances in a seemingly innocent product, and then they get you to buy the product often enough to establish the addiction. You're training the reward centers in the brain to release floods of cravings. How do they do that? Oh, they have this reward system. So you buy the Kool-Aid, or you buy Marlboro cigarettes, or you buy Hawaiian Punch, and you get a little purchase coupon. You save them up because you've got this warehouse, and it's heavily advertised in the like the comic books, where you can check off. You save your proof of purchase. You check off. You send in your little coupons. And so that encourages the repeat purchase. And then the terrible thing is that those products are logoed. So in the case of the Marlboro Country Store, maybe you would send in and you would get a lighter. It would have the Marlboro logo on it. Well, now you have these hypersensitive, addicted, reactive brain cells that at the mere reminder of the product will flood the brain with cravings. So now the child has bought, Kool-Aid, a Kool-Aid wristwatch, a Kool-Aid cassette player, Kool-Aid shorts, Kool-Aid hat. Now the child is surrounded by reminders, and all the child can think about is Kool-Aid. They're supposed to be learning about life. They're supposed to be gaining life skills. They're supposed to be learning how to negotiate and how to control emotions, how to think, how to be kind, how to take care of themselves. But all of that, not all, but that brain power, which is supposed to be developing the child, giving them skills, is now diverted over to cravings for sugar.
It's interesting. You mentioned the visual side of the addiction. You're seeing the word wherever you look. It's on your toys. It's on your probably pencil case that you take to school with you every single day. It becomes part of your everyday life. Right?
Yeah, and you talked earlier about normalizing.
Normalizing.
Now the mother can no longer see the danger. So Nickelodeon we start out in 1980, early 1980s, with 150 commercials in one Saturday morning. It only takes 5 commercials to persuade a toddler to prefer a product. As soon as tobacco came in, it went to like 350. Within 7 years, it was 550 commercials per Saturday morning. And in the US, a company called Nickelodeon carried those commercials to 65 million households. It only takes 5 commercials to alter a child's brain, to alter their thinking. And there were 6 children in 65 million households exposed to 500 commercials in one Saturday morning.